Good afternoon, March 22nd, 2025, and today is your seismic forecast from Quake Weather. So we're starting as we always do, looking at the sun in 211 angstroms. This is a loop of all the images that the satellites have taken in the last 24 hours. And as you can see, we have a very large, massive coronal hole turning into face Earth, which will be facing Earth probably sometime tomorrow. We had one just turning away, didn't really create a bunch of seismic activity, but it wasn't that large either. This one is very large, and what we typically look for in solar cycles is that when we have sunspot maximum, which we just had, when the when the number of sunspots decrease and the intensity of the solar cycle starts to wind down, that's when these coronal holes can typically trigger larger earthquakes than usual, or at least more frequently, and in cases larger magnitude. So we're in that period right now where sunspot maximum is kind of going away, and we're slowly going towards sunspot minimum, even though we're not there yet. It's decreasing, and so these coronal holes tend to trigger more powerful quakes and have more effect on volcano activity. Sorry, I had to clear my throat there. And so, anyways, this is turning into Earth. It should not be having too large of an effect on seismic activity as it is facing the Earth, because it does take time for the solar wind, the unmitigated solar wind, to reach the Earth from the sun. It doesn't travel at the speed of light, so it won't get here in 8 minutes. It usually takes anywhere from, depending on the speed of it, it can take, a couple days, up to 3 days usually. So, but looking forward to the rest of this week. We have a seismic watch period we're going to be keeping a close eye on throughout the week, because again, this is a very large coronal hole. It's pretty powerful, and it's coming after sunspot maximum. So this is where we start. We have something to look at. I think this will start interacting with the alpha waves and the interplanetary magnetic fields sometime next week. My guess would be around Tuesday, Wednesday is when it really starts to pick up. And again, these are just rough estimations, and then it'll probably peak around Thursday or Friday, maybe Saturday-ish, and then start to wind down again. But again, that's real ballpark, give or take a day or two. But we're looking at, the risk tends to start to ramp up a little bit as the coronal hole is facing Earth. We have this area down here that's already facing Earth, so it's possible that the solar wind from there is powerful enough, and it is on Earth's plane, or enough of it is on Earth's plane that it could do something. So that's the coronal hole. Let's go over here to the potential field source surface model. This is on Gong. And as you can see, very large coronal hole. Green, that means it's positive magnetic polarity. Currently in this time of the solar cycle, the sun's magnetic poles flip every few decades. So right now, the positive magnetic polarity is actually on the bottom. So this is an extension of the southern solar polar field, or the southern SPF, solar polar field. Let's go to the next tab over here. So this is our mean sea level pressure right here. If you select this right here, if you want to follow along, this is our mean sea level pressure. So the gray areas are high pressure cells. Like, let's find one down here. See, this is a high pressure cell right here. The yellow is kind of like the middle area. So, and the purple is a low pressure cell. So you have these high pressure cells that are taking charged particles from the upper atmospheric layers and then bringing them down and concentrating them into these low pressure cells. And typically what we look for is, there's no plate boundaries on this map, but we want to look for strong low pressure cells near plate boundaries. So there's one right here, and I would definitely put like Japan on somewhat of a watch, at the very least a medium risk. Alaska almost always has low pressure cells up here, and we did see quite a bit of activity on the Aleutian Islands just a few days ago, or I believe maybe as far back as a week ago. So maybe keep eyes on this area, but there's not too much civilization out here in the Aleutian Islands. So hopefully nothing too crazy out there. U.S. West Coast doesn't look too bad. I would only put the U.S. West Coast at a low risk. That might change and increase to a medium risk depending on pre-seismic activity we see, because we have seen some slightly larger than usual in Southern California in the past few months. So, California, the U.S. West Coast, this whole area right here gets, 2 magnitude, 3 magnitude every day. So that's not very common. Anytime something hits 4 magnitude, it kind of raises an eyebrow. Moving down here to the west coast of South America. So this is like the Chile, Argentina, Peru region right here. I would definitely put that on medium risk too. They get a lot of activity right there, and we do see some low pressure cell activity going on in that area. If we move over here, just judging by this map, it doesn't look like there's a lot going on over here, but there actually is, and in my opinion, this whole region right here, I would say this is like, Indonesia and the Philippines, Vanuatu and Papua New Guinea area right here. And I'd say the highest risk area right here, right now, is like the Tonga, Fiji area. And we'll get to that why. It has nothing to do with this map. But you see we have low pressure cells right here. And there are plate boundaries right here. So again, when we look for areas that have a higher risk of 6 magnitude or higher earthquakes, we look for areas that have strong low pressure cell activity near plate boundaries, but we also have to correlate that with outgoing long wave radiation, and that's what these are. See these red spots right here? These are what we call OLR anomalies, and that's basically slow moving upward charged particles that are actually coming from underneath the Earth's surface. It's part of the global electric circuit. We get charged particles coming from space, going down through the atmospheric layers, and it penetrates down the lithosphere underneath the surface of the Earth, and then we have slower moving radiation coming upward. And typically, or not typically, but what we try to look for here is, again, there's no plate boundaries here, but I have a pretty good idea of where they are. So wherever we see these red areas right here, that means there's a lot of charged particles emanating upward from the lithosphere. And if you picture the charged particles coming from space, from those low pressure cells that we talked about, you kind of think of that as like the electrical connection, kind of like a circuit connecting. You have all those charged particles coming downward from space in the upper atmospheric layers, connecting with the slow-moving charging particles that are moving upward through the atmospheric layers. And so right now, just judging by this, and this could all change in a couple days, and it probably will, so this isn't really too valid right now, but the strongest OLR anomalies are this big one right here in Australia. There aren't any plate boundaries too close to that, so I wouldn't worry about that, but this would be a much bigger concern right here, Indonesia. Up here in the Philippines too, they get a lot of big quakes in the Philippines. And then this area right here is seeing a lot of pre-seismic activity. So again, even though this isn't the deepest red area right here in the Fiji-Tonga region of the Earth, I would still put this area probably at the highest alert. And okay, so let's move on. I think this area right here, possibly too, this is not too far from Ecuador. This is like El Salvador region, kind of like off the coast right here. I would put that at maybe a medium risk. And let's go over to the latest earthquakes. This is fun. So this search, I put in a custom search, and what I do is I look for, I have 3 criteria. I have the time, which is a 7-day period, which is probably a little too long. I'm going to change that actually to 5-day. I'm just going to show you guys how I do that. See, this is if you click on this gear icon, it's the settings. You can have like a preset, search criteria for your, which earthquakes you want to appear on the map. But if you scroll down here, you can go to modify search. If you don't have any search at all, like if you just use like one of these default ones, here, just let me refresh actually, because I want you, just in case anybody is curious how you do all this stuff. See, all right, well, I'll just go to modify search. Usually this button says search earthquake catalog or something along those lines. So let's just go to modify search, and usually it'll be right here. That's the default. 4.5 I think is a little too high. So what I do is we want, so instead of 7 days, I want to do custom. So if it's the 22nd, I only want to go back 5 days. So I'm just going to change this number right here to 7. So it's March 17th to March 22nd. 2.5 is too small magnitude, and this is the second criteria. I want 4.0 or higher. You can leave maximum blank, and then you have to click on you have to click on this little plus icon to open the advanced options, and then I go for depth. A depth, the only reason I put 60 and not 100 kilometers is because I live on the West Coast, the U.S. West Coast, and the subduction zone that's, there because of the plate boundaries on the U.S. West Coast is a lot closer to the surface than other parts of the world. I'll explain that when we get back to the map, but typically in most areas of the world where they have major earthquakes and we do forecasting like this, 100 kilometers should be the minimum. And usually in some areas like that Fiji Tonga area, I would say even 200 kilometers, because they get big events at 400, 500 kilometers deep, which is really deep. And they get those actually quite frequently out there, relatively speaking to everywhere else on the earth. So anyways, I put 60. That way we can catch some of the deeper quakes. And because we want deeper quakes, I followed the methodology of blot echoes. Deeper earthquakes in the subduction zone tend to indicate a precursor to a larger event closer to the surface. And that's why we want those. We want some of these deeper quakes that are above 4-point magnitude. Anyways, and we go down here to search, and there we go. I'll leave it at newest first. So see this area right here, this Fiji Tonga area. Might zoom in on this. This area right here has seen a lot of activity. If you notice, look how deep all these are, right? There's just 577, 578. I mean, sometimes I've seen them at 600 kilometers deep, which is pretty crazy. That's that's pretty far beneath the surface. Anyways, what we've seen over the past 5 days, one on the 17th, we had a whole bunch on the 19th, Fiji Tonga area. This is all basically the same region right here. I don't follow direction. I've been watching and observing these quakes for a long time. I know Dutch Synth. He's one of the most, he's got probably, I think, the biggest YouTube channel on earthquake forecasting. It's not that I don't think it's valid. I just, from observing blot echoes in particular, there's no single linear direction that these things go in. More often than not, and this is the only, I respect Dutch sense, but I don't, and maybe I just don't understand fully. I haven't fully educated myself on his deep library of knowledge that he has. But I don't put a lot of stock in the direction, because often what you'll see is okay, that one right there, and this is just for blot echoes. This is not for, I also don't look at really small magnitude quakes. Anything below a 4-point magnitude is not statistically relevant, because we get literally thousands of quakes that are a 2-3 magnitude almost every single day. We get hundreds, if not thousands, globally. So I just don't think they're statistically relevant, in particular for forecasting major events. So unless you get like a mad cluster and it's really unusual for the area, like if you suddenly see 153 magnitudes in California, that is most likely a precursor to a large event, because it's so rare. But like I said, more often than not all the times, because we deal in probability and statistics here, is more often than not, what I see is that one will happen here, and then one happens up there, and then it goes south again. See, to me, I almost feel like the direction of the earthquake isn't so much linear, so much as that it bounces back and forth. See, and then it came down, and then the next one right after that, up again, and then the next one after that, hit south. So, and then again north, and then again down. See, they don't go in a line. It's not like one here, one here, one here, one here, and the energy doesn't travel like that. Maybe the energy does, but the events that occur where we get the electrical discharge events don't occur in linear directions. They almost always, from my observation, particularly with blot echoes, because those are the ones I focus on, it's back and forth. You'll have one here, then one up here, one down here, one up here, and it'll just kind of be back and forth in this area. Anyways, so we're seeing a lot of deep events, 4 magnitude or higher down here, and this could be a precursor to a large event. But again, this particular little corner of the world, which is gorgeous and not too many people live, when they have blot echoes like this, they don't always get a big earthquake, because these types of events are pretty common in this area. In other parts of the world, if I were to see, so like if something like this was occurring in Japan, I would say I would put Japan on a very high risk for having a major event. Right here, I mean, I don't know, it could be 50-50. This could be all they see. And then they could have a 7-pointer, you know, they could have a 7 magnitude or higher. That is possible. But anyways, I would put them in the highest risk because they have just this large cluster of events, but also this area right here. In Papua New Guinea, this whole area, they get large events sometimes too. And if we just kind of zoom in on their area right here, see, these are pretty deep. These are all about 100 kilometers or so deep. And I would put them on a pretty high risk situation too. And then if we look at this tight little cluster right here, you know, this part of Indonesia right here, we got one on the 17th, 18th, 2 on the 19th, and then 1 on the 22nd. And these are all pretty deep. They haven't come to the shallow area yet. And there is minor low pressure cell area occurring down there. Most of it's occurring down here, if you remember. If we look over here at the wind map, just south of that area. But we do have these small little areas where that could be coming down. And if you look, all those charged particles are coming down into that area right there, the islands we were just looking at right here. So it's right there in that area. So if these move westward, you know what I mean, or if another low pressure cell forms in that area, that would be a much higher risk for a major event. And I'm going to have an update on all this later, because after a couple days, all these things in the map move around. So the locations for risk assessment are going to change quite a bit. But as of today, and this could change, and most likely it will, I'm going to put Tonga, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia at the top, and then maybe even Philippines too. I usually group these two together because they're so close together and they have events. They get large events regularly. So yeah, and then I put Japan, medium risk. Let's see. We look over here. Let's just go up to Japan real quick. So we had, let's see, on the 20th, we had one, but just one. So 2 days ago, and this could all change. So I would keep an eye on this area. If we start to see more of these stack up, if we start to see more 4-point magnitudes real deep like this, like 100 kilometers or more, then I would keep an eye on that area. This area north of Japan is where we had the most pressure cells too. I think this is technically Russia, so maybe up there too. And sometimes we do see big events out there. And we did see, you know, low pressure cell right here, you know. Well, how come we're not calling that out? Well, it's really far away from any plate boundaries. That doesn't mean it's completely out of the water, but it does mean, see, look how far away they are from plate boundaries. So probably not too big of a deal. And if we look at the OLR map for right now, there's not much going on over there. I think Korea and that whole area will be fine. And a little bit of an area right here, northern U.S. West Coast, so maybe Oregon, Washington, I'd put at a low risk. And okay, so these are the areas. So we had Tonga, Fiji, right? Tonga, Fiji, and let's make the text here white so you can see it. And I'll make it bigger too. Tonga, Fiji, and let's just do this for all the cells here. Text color white, make it bold, and 15 is fine. So we had multiple blot echoes in Tonga, Fiji, right? So let's look down there real quick. We'll zoom in a little more. So you had 11 blot echoes. So we'll put that. $11 blot echoes. And then we also had Papua New Guinea, right? Papua New Guinea. Great old school techno song from the future sound of London. You know, you know. So Papua New Guinea, let's go back and look at Papua New Guinea again. Papua New Guinea has a nice little cluster of events too, so I would say 7 blot echoes down there, right? Yeah, just about. Let's just call it 7. We had 7 blot echoes there. And let's do Indonesia. Whoops. So what do we do? 15, bold. Change the text color here so you can see. And let's check out Indonesia. Let's see what kind of blot echoes we had down there. Yeah, so we had this whole cluster right there, right? And I'm putting it all the way over here. It's just so those are the only ones that show up, because if I zoom in too close, some of them will be off and they won't be counted over here. So I have to zoom out and usually push these to an odd place just to get the list that I want. So here we had 10 blot echoes. So, and because you see such a tight cluster right there, I would actually put this in second place as opposed to third. So let me change that on my spreadsheet. I'll move this one up. Put Indonesia at number 2 with 10 blot echoes. 10 blot plus a cluster. And like I said, when you have a bunch of events, especially 4 magnitude or higher, occurring in a real tight cluster like that in a short period of time. So in all these, you had 5 of them. And, well, I mean, it was all over a 5-day period. So not, but that is a little higher than usual. That should raise an eyebrow, and we'll keep an eye on that. And this is part of Indonesia too. That's that little area down there. And then if we look at the Philippines, and that's interesting that we're seeing this right here, because if we go back to the wind map, I remember see this real tight low pressure cell right here? See this one purple dot right there. Look at all that wind pressure, all that low pressure cell just zipping into this area. So it's just rolling around this area. And then if we look at our OLR anomaly map, right? See that deep red area that I pointed out earlier? See, that kind of raises my brow a little bit too, because this is a pretty big outgoing long wave radiation area. So there's a lot of charged particles emanating upward. But it could be just because of that, maybe they're having a tropical storm right there. I haven't checked the weather, but that looks like a very powerful low pressure cell. So let's go back and look at that. So we have this big area, very north side of the Philippines in the ocean. And then we look right there, very strong pressure cell, fast moving winds right there in that exact same area, right? And then if we go over here, there's no earthquakes there yet, right? Nothing yet. But I don't know, maybe pressure's building up right there, and then we'll see something there. I would definitely keep an eye on that area. That low pressure cell's not big, but it looks kind of strong, So if we go over here, we look at let's just go over here to my home state over here. Like these low pressure cells, I mean, you see how they're not as powerful. I mean, you see this is actually Mexico, but you see how they're not just swarming in a vortex right there. They're kind of going and moving around. But this one over here, I mean, that big one that we saw in the Philippines is just north of the Philippines right there. So, and it's right around this area too. So I don't know, this area is seeing some movement on the past few days. So maybe keep an eye on there. And is that Palau or Palu? Nice. And then Japan, we already looked at. And then let's go over here, this last one. I would put medium risk. They could see a large event. I don't think it's as high risk as the other areas that we've covered. I still think Philippines is probably medium to high risk. It's hard to say. Again, this is all probability and statistics. It's an art. It's not an exact science. If it was, there's a ton of us that would be rich already. So let's see what we got over here. So these are relatively deep. Let's see. We had 3 on the 18th, 2 on the 20th, and 1 yesterday. So maybe piping down a little bit, but that could mean, more charged particles forming. I would keep an eye on this area right here. So I would say medium risk there too. So let's just, let's do that. Okay. No, dude, I don't need to do that, man. Okay. I mean, sure. I have to enable this to Brave. All right. Sorry, folks. I didn't know I have to add control copy and control paste key commands to Brave. This is cute. Okay. Can we do this now? Okay. So now I just changed the name of this right here to the Philippines. And no blot. No blot. But strong low pressure cell. And then the medium risk areas, I won't bother putting them on the list, but they are the northern area of Japan, up on into Russia, and then Alaska, and the western coast of Southwest or South America. So, you know, Chile, Argentina, maybe possibly Peru, but mostly Chile, Argentina, and kind of like the Bolivia, that just kind of region right there that we saw on the map. All right here. So that's mostly Chile. Bolivia is kind of inward a little bit, but I think, and then this is Argentina right here. So, or Peru and Argentina area. So I think that's about it. Those are the high risk areas. And again, when we look at the sun, just to go back to the coronal hole is not facing Earth yet. So it'll begin facing Earth, you know, probably tomorrow. And then we'll, you know, late tomorrow, I would say around this time tomorrow. And then the day after that, you know, so I'm thinking probably like Monday, Tuesday, probably Tuesday or Wednesday, we'll start to really see increased. We'll be near the peak, if not at the peak of this watch period. And so come Monday, when this is actually facing Earth, because the size of this can change, you know, some things can change. Not everything stays static in the world. Everything is moving. So on Monday, I'll come in, and if anything happens before then, I'll cook up another live stream and update everyone. But this is where we're at now. These are, if I were to call them out now, and this could all change, right now, these are the areas of highest interest for large events. And then on medium risk, we have, like I mentioned, the Chile, Argentina, like South America, Japan, Alaska, those areas. And I think that about wraps it up. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments.